This one's about the display options for the workbook and the worksheet. Now, most of these are really straightforward, but if you don't know they're there, you won't know to use them. So we're going to cover them anyway. We can show or hide the horizontal scroll bar, the vertical scroll bar, or the sheet tabs. We have an option to group the dates in autofilter, or not. We can show or hide all of the objects in the workbook. We can show or hide the row and column headers. We can show formulas as formulas. We can reorient the sheet from right to left instead of from left to right. We can turn off the page breaks. We can show zeros in cells that contain zeros. We can show the outline symbols when we apply an outline, and we can show the grid line and even change the grid line color. So more advanced options. To go to the advanced options, we're going to go to, and say it with me, Alt-F-T, left-click Advanced, and scrolling down a bit, we have the advanced options for this workbook. We have the option to select a different workbook. That's the first choice we have. These are all the default settings. By default, the horizontal scroll bar and the vertical scroll bar will be displayed, as will the sheet tabs, and I'm going to turn all those three off together and deselect those boxes and left-click OK, and we'll see that take effect on the worksheet. The scroll bars are gone and the tabs are gone as well. So the next option, Group Dates in Autofilter menu, is on by default. Let me show you what that is before I turn it off and show you what that does. I've got a worksheet where I input a column of dates and titled it Dates. I'm going to apply a filter and then left-click the drop-down for the filter. The dates range from, as you can see, 2012 to 2015. These dates are grouped by year, and left-clicking that little plus sign will expand out and show you the months that are available. Left-clicking the month, and we see the days of that month. That's the date grouping that we can turn off using the advanced options. Back in the advanced Excel options dialog box, I'm going to deselect that option, left-click OK, and when we left-click the drop-down, instead of getting the grouping, we get the actual data points listed. The grouping sure appears to be helpful, but if somebody wants to turn that functionality off, they certainly can. The next option setting has to do with objects, and behind the dialog box you can see some objects I set up on the worksheet. There's sort of a master toggle switch where you can select all objects to be shown or hide all of the objects in the workbook. Left-clicking that and going back to the worksheet, the objects disappear. They're still there, but they're just not visible anymore. The next grouping of display options have to do with the worksheet, and once again we can select which worksheet this applies to, and the drop-down will display all the worksheets for all of the open workbooks. The default will be the active worksheet in the current workbook. We can show row and column headers, which is the default setting. We can clear that checkbox and hide the row and column headers. It's a cleaner look. You might want to do this if you're presenting this spreadsheet for somebody else to view. In fact, I think that's what a lot of these settings are. You wouldn't clearly do a lot of these things if you're actually working in the workbook, but if you're finished with it and you want to polish it up a little bit and get rid of some of the functionality that somebody that's just viewing the content doesn't need to have displayed for them, these option settings provide that. The next one, show formulas in cells instead of their calculated results. That is exactly the same setting as this right here, show formulas. So instead of the result of the formula, you get the formula displayed itself in the cells. When I go back to the advanced option settings and scroll down, you'll see that checkbox selected. So whether you're turning that functionality on here or in the formula tab, either way that checkbox becomes selected and you'll display the formula instead of the results. The next option, show sheet right to left, I'm guessing might have to do with somebody that might be left-handed, or somebody at the very least just wants to reorient the way the sheet is displayed. Choosing this option and applying it does a few things. I'll left-click OK. The tabs are now listed on the right side of the screen, ascending from right to left, and the row headers are on the right side of the screen, and the navigation buttons are on the right side of the screen as well. The next option has to do with page breaks. Now, when you go to the page break view, Excel will automatically insert, when I go back to normal view, page breaks. Those are automatic page breaks. Sometimes those can get sort of annoying. So Alt-F-T, back in Excel options, we can turn those off by deselecting and clearing that box, left-clicking OK, and the page breaks are now gone. The next option has to do with displaying a zero value. I input a 0 into cell F10, in fact in F11 and F12 as well. You can see it in the formula bar, but it's not displayed in the cell. Alt-F-T, back to the advanced options, scrolling down, I can check that box to have that 0 displayed, so when I go back to the workbook, I have my zeros displayed. This can help to provide a uniform look to a schedule if in the schedule there are cells that contain zeros, and you don't just want to leave them blank, you want to have a value, which in this case is 0, showing so that it kind of matches up format-wise with the rest of the schedule. The next option has to do with outlines and whether the outline structure is displayed or not. To apply an outline, left-click any cell in a schedule that has subtotals and or grand totals, go to the Data tab, go to the Outline group, left-click the Group command, and then left-click Auto Outline. Excel automatically sets up an outline so that you can hide the values that are feeding the subtotals or the grand totals. And I've got two outline bars over here as well. The Show Outline Symbols if an outline is applied is selected by default. When I clear that checkbox and go back to the workbook, the outline symbols are not displayed anymore. This allows you the flexibility so that if you don't want to have your outlines be visible anymore, you don't have to go and clear all of them. You can just clear that checkbox in the advanced Excel option settings. The next option, or the last option that we're going to talk about, is Show Grid Lines. Now there's another place to turn the grid lines on and off, which I'll show you in a second. But the functionality here is sort of enhanced versus the functionality that's on the ribbon command. And that is because you can change the color of the grid lines. And I'm going to change them to something that's drastically different, red. And if you go to the View tab, you have the option to clear that checkbox so that the grid lines are no longer displayed. And when you go back to the advanced option settings, the checkbox here is cleared as well. So that's the advanced option settings for the workbook and the worksheet. We can show or hide the horizontal and vertical scroll bars. We can show or hide the sheet tabs. We can turn off the date grouping in the auto filter menu. We can toggle the display or the visibility of all of the objects in the workbook on or off. In our worksheets, we can choose to show or hide the column headers. We can show the formulas instead of the calculated results. We can flip-flop the way the screen is displayed so that the worksheet is displayed from right to left instead of left to right. We can turn off the page breaks, show cells that contain 0 values as zeros. We can toggle the outline symbols on or off. And we can choose to display the grid lines and even change the grid line color.